Good night. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this very interesting and stimulating webinar from all points of view, understanding and high technologies in new generative diseases. So we have the honor today of having with us as the main speaker who will guide us through this presentation, Professor Stefano Sensi. Professor Stefano Sensi, with whom I work with great joy, is a full professor of neurology at the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Chieti. He is the head of the neurology department at the Chieti Hospital, and he is also the director of the Department of Neurosciences. You can obviously send requests for explanations. You can use your control panel for questions. This session will be recorded, and you will receive the link to the recording within 24 hours of the webinar. Without taking up precious space from our speaker, Professor Sensi, welcome and thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you for the invitation. So we will take a brief look at the opportunities that arise with the use of artificial intelligence in a very specific context, namely neurodegenerative diseases. However, we will also talk a bit more generally about what is happening and will definitely happen in the field of biology and medicine. Surely many are now familiar with the terms we have been using for a few years. We use artificial intelligence, understood as a community, as machine learning, as NLP, natural language processing applications, and then there's the whole very interesting and complex world of deep learning that helps us in terms of diagnosis, for example, in the field of nervous system diseases. There is obviously great interest in using these technologies to automate and optimize the quality of imaging diagnostics, which, as you can imagine, is fundamental, but also to identify patterns that are hidden, that escape even the keen eye of your expert neuroradiologist. This means starting to see small nuances, small alterations that the doctor or radiologist may not be able to catch, and identifying patterns that are out of the ordinary and cannot be detected by the human eye. So a whole series of processing that can lead to more accurate and earlier diagnoses. Naturally, we will also see that there are benefits here, but also some pitfalls from the human eye. So a whole series of processing that can lead to more accurate and earlier diagnoses. Of course, here we will see that we have benefits, but also pitfalls. Obviously, the quality of the images must be very high to be able to have this type of approach. And also the algorithms we use must be tested and validated. And this process also requires careful care. Omics refers to data from liquid biopsies covering genomics, metabolomics, and proteomics to build risk paradigms and identify disease pathways. AI enables early personalized diagnoses and aids management. It optimizes therapeutic protocols, advances drug discovery and trial design. Telemedicine protocols can also be optimized, real-time data on body function and life management, offering valuable computable information. AI, even in the context of neurodiseases, not only allows us to make diagnoses that are early and precise, but it can also play a role in managing patients. This means we can optimize treatments and we can start finding drugs more efficiently, and we can delve into the design of trials. We can also optimize telemedicine, what we can capture from individuals in their environment using phones and wearables. These devices give real-time data on body function and daily life management, providing valuable information. We also have the opportunity to enter another area, that of telemedicine, to optimize all telemedicine protocols. Then we will talk a bit more in detail about this other topic, which raises a whole series of questions. What we can capture from the individual in their environment in an ecological situation. from the almost infinite flow of information we can gather from simple elements like a cell phone to even more selective and specific elements, the whole world of wearable devices that we can have our patients wear. These devices can provide us with a wealth of important parameters in real time, helping us understand how that person's body is functioning and how they are managing within the ecosystem of daily life, giving us a whole series of computable information that can be an enormous resource. Of course, there's the whole preclinical aspect, which involves enhancing the use of artificial intelligence in both medicine and in nervous system diseases, particularly regarding the early identification of drugs. You know that this year, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry was awarded to DeepMind for the implementation of what happens, the practice of what happens. With AlphaFold, we've made giant strides in identifying protein structures. Crystallography used to take years to achieve what AlphaFold can do in just a few hours, or at most a few days. So we have everything related to the design of a molecule, the identification of crystallographic structures, which has been incredibly accelerated, and we are definitely just at the beginning of this process. We have everything related to the optimization of the molecule, and we have everything concerning the interaction, which is a central topic in pharmacological therapy, all regarding the interaction of the individual molecule within the individual, within each single person. Think about what happens to most patients who reach a certain age and are polyprescribed. Patients often take multiple medications, leading to complex interactions in their digestive systems. AI's predictive power helps us understand these interactions and predict side effects. Enhancing our knowledge of drug responses, AI also supports clinicians in diagnosis and decision-making with advanced tools. Yet, with the computational tools we have, thanks to the enormous predictive computational power of artificial intelligence, we could finally shed light on the multiple interactions and the compounds that are formed in vivo in the stomachs of these individuals. We could predict possible side effects and how these might modulate the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of the specific medications these people are taking. This would give us a much more detailed profile of the actual response we can expect from that particular molecule that a specific patient is going to take. Then there's a very interesting aspect that concerns the decision-making process, how we arrive at a diagnosis, not just through the use of tools, including everything we can utilize from an instrumental or omics perspective, but the very decision-making process that the doctor, the clinician, faces and will have to face is certainly advanced by the tools that are now managed and already available. We know about the good feedback that has been received, not without problems, regarding Watson in the field of oncology, in neurology, and in medicine. We have certainly seen a massive use of ChatGPT's LLMs from the very beginning for my colleagues, and this study that has just come out has sparked a lot of debate. It compared, and here are the first critical points we can identify, the diagnostic capability of a system like ChatGPT against experts who were dealing with standardized and selected high-level clinical cases, meaning cases of high difficulty, using ChatGPT as an aid. So this was a proper RCT, a randomized clinical trial to see what the diagnostic capability was of expert doctors using the ChatGPT tool versus the diagnostic capability of ChatGPT alone. And surprisingly, perhaps even a bit unsettling, what has come out is that the diagnostic capability of the doctor combined with ChatGPT performs worse than ChatGPT alone. This opens up a significant scenario for understanding what will happen to clinicians what their role will be in the decision-making process and how much should be outsourced to machines. Data from tools and devices, including wearables and phones, offer insights into habits and health, but raise privacy issues. Ethical considerations are crucial as we decide on data use limits. As we have already mentioned, we not only have the indices and vital parameters that we can regularly investigate through occasional measurements or even with wearables, but with our cell phones, we have the opportunity to explore, and this obviously opens up a huge discussion about privacy. However, we have the chance to investigate how an individual contextualizes in their daily living environment, essentially learning everything about their habits and behaviors. And I must emphasize again that there are significant privacy concerns. This enormous mass of data can be harnessed to identify for each individual their health trajectory, determine their potential response to a therapy, identify risk factors, and more. There is a huge situation that needs to be evaluated with great care because, as I say, for the last time, the ethical issues and privacy concerns are obviously enormous. We, as a human community, will need to decide whether to move in that direction or to impose some breaks and limits at the expense of the enormous heuristic possibilities that the extreme use of this data could offer us. So far, we've talked, and I've done it really quickly, about the opportunities that artificial intelligence has offered us at this point. We've discussed the use of data sets, and I've briefly introduced the concepts of machine learning and deep learning, highlighting the great advantages we've gained in just a few years from using ChatGPT. But now I'm essentially referring back to the framework of this conversation based on a recent perspective article published in Cell a few weeks ago. Let's move into the future when we start to move away from the exclusive use of LLMs, meaning we're talking about Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot, and any other cloud tools. When we begin to adopt a different perspective where LLMs are put to work in producing agents, we shift from LLMs to LAMs, which are agents with autonomous decision-making capabilities. We know that these things are already happening in the real world. A typical example is self-driving cars, which are now widely available in North America, including self-driving taxis and more. Well, if this type of process reaches the medical field in biomedicine, what can we expect and what can we aim for as a future goal? What we could have is an extremely interesting and potentially very problematic system. We will also get to talk about this. We can imagine how, in real life, functions that are currently managed by clinical researchers and preclinical researchers could be outsourced. So we would have a virtual laboratory where agents that are, and this is crucial, capable of decision making operate independently. They can be directed by scientists or groups of scientists who become a bit like the conductors of this coordinated activity. We can imagine, and it has already been envisioned, that there could be entities, agents that have the ability to formulate hypotheses, agents capable of creating subdomains of specialized knowledge. Let's stay within the realm of neurodegenerative diseases. There could be agents specializing in managing knowledge related to phenomena like neuronal death, neuroinflammation, autoimmune processes, as well as neuropsychology, neuropsychological testing, and also omics applied to the central nervous system, including neuroimaging. There are people who facilitate brainstorming among these agents that have generated hypotheses or are debating these hypotheses. These agents act by setting up and starting to build experimental protocols that range from the simplest, like using a cell phone, to in vitro studies, and all the way to clinical trials. They operate autonomously, establishing the most effective and efficient experimental protocols to test a hypothesis, a drug, or a diagnostic and therapeutic pathway. So the scientist of the future could be like a conductor, orchestrating and overseeing the activities of agents that operate autonomously. So, in the beautiful article I'm citing, the possibility of proceeding in stages is highlighted. We are, as in everyday practice, many of us are at level 0, meaning we have a completely controlled use of rapidly available artificial intelligences. We are still within the realm of machine learning and so on. Or we could be at level 1, where we essentially interface with ChatGPT, giving some degree of autonomy to what is produced while supervising it, but we haven't yet entered that context. We just described of LAMs, meaning agents that have autonomous activity and interact with each other in an increasingly independent manner. So we would have a system, a level 2, where the supervision of scientists is still somewhat predominant, or it is hypothesized, because it's good to pre-configure this as well. A level 3 where overall the scientist essentially has no role other than to supervise what has emerged from the free interaction, from the generation of hypotheses, from the generation of requirements, all the way to managing the entire scientific process of agents that are in fact artificial intelligences dedicated to these sub-actions. So a situation opens up, as I have already mentioned and anticipated. That is extremely promising. We will certainly make enormous strides in the progress of synthesis, in identifying new molecules, and in innovative, effective, and efficient diagnostic and therapeutic processes, and so on. Medicine will be at the center of a huge revolution that we will experience, but alongside the great opportunities, possible challenges arise, especially regarding the quality of the data, the ethical context, and our awareness about the process itself. We should never rely solely on an automated process where we cannot understand what the internal logic of the decision-making process is. The main effort will be to control, understand, and intervene on the quality of the decisions made by the machine, and to maintain a minimum level of oversight, because without this oversight, the risks can be quite significant. I'm speaking from my field on neurodegenerative diseases of the nervous system and biomedicine, but these discussions can be extended to a global perspective, even touching on existential risks, as some have mentioned and others still fear. The major effort will be to control, understand, and intervene on the quality of the decisions made by the machine, and to maintain a minimum level of oversight. Because without this oversight, the risks can be quite significant. Of course, I'm talking about my field, the neurodegenerative aspect of nervous system diseases, as well as biomedicine, but these discussions can certainly be extended to a global perspective, even touching on existential risks, as some have mentioned and others still fear. Now, I had said that this second phase, which I provocatively described as the real future, is indeed a scenario we will have to venture into sooner or later. However, I must contradict myself, because it's essentially not the case. We've already reached that level, and in fact, there was an editorial just a few days ago in the latest issue of Nature, disclosing that a paper, which is a preprint on medRxiv, has already done what I just described, a virtual lab managed by agents, along with supervision in this case. So we are at level 2 of the framework we previously described. It generated 69 molecules that can essentially be put into production as compounds to combat COVID-19 infections, specifically SARS-CoV-2. So what I had somewhat misleadingly described as a futuristic path is already a reality today. So we will have a whole series of situations opening up. Time will tell. I hope that if you didn't like what I said, at least you enjoyed the accompanying images. These, in a prototypical phase, are nothing more than what we are already doing. I generated them using the usual tools of ChatGPT. As an institute, as the Department of Neurosciences, we are highly involved in this process. For a few years now, we have been utilizing artificial intelligence by applying it to omics data that we receive from the omics component of our university, CAST, and neuroimaging data from the Advanced Technologies Institute, where we conduct MRI, and a whole series of high-definition imaging analyses. This combination has already allowed us to move forward on some ideas and hypotheses regarding the degenerative mechanism in Alzheimer's and also in other degenerative diseases. I like to remember the people you see in this montage of collaborators who have actively participated in these efforts. And at this point, I welcome your questions if there are any.
Thank you, Stefano. That was truly a comprehensive, stimulating, and thought-provoking overview. I have many questions that I'm asking here on the panel. I'm trying to select a few because our time is running out. So, from a medical researcher's perspective, what is your perception of the development of the entire research world? Do you feel that there is a sort of explosion of knowledge due to the implementation of autonomous agents capable of doing the work of hundreds of thousands of researchers in just a few seconds, processing vast amounts of scientific content and drawing conclusions, and engaging with related or even unrelated disciplines? How do you see the research world in this scenario you've described, which is no longer science fiction? It's a reality.
Look, my direct experience is with those very prototypical levels we've described according to that framework. In everyday life, I believe many of us have faced this both in clinical and experimental settings with this still very primitive use of what's quickly available, like machine learning, LLMs, and so on. The research world is perplexed. It's divided, as always, like in all human activities, between people who are extremely enthusiastic and those who are a bit more cautious. There's obviously also a big concern about the existential aspect regarding what the future holds for scientists, the future of clinicians, how much will actually be in the hands of artificial intelligence and how much will still remain under our control. What role will we have? Will we still have a role? Will we still be necessary in these types of processes? As for the more advanced part, it is true, as I said, as I have just shown, that there are already some experiences, but they are still really in their infancy. So I believe that the feeling, the sentiment of the field on this type of even more advanced instruments is not yet known much, and therefore a common feeling has not consolidated. However, what I want to emphasize is that there remains this enormous cloud of varying colors.
The use of artificial intelligence has proven to be capable of producing a high number of scientific articles that contain